The 1960s were an age of firsts. Yuri was the first man to travel to space. John Shepard Barron invented the first cash machine. The Beatles played the first stadium concert. History seemed to be filled with people doing things that had never been done before, but not every first is worth celebrating. In 1968, an 11-year-old girl from Newcastle would become the first young female in Britain to make history for all the wrong reasons. Her name was Mary Bell.
Newcastle, 1968. In the Scotswood area, 3 children were playing on the roof of a disused air raid shelter. The shelter was a leftover reminder of another time, a structure built during the Second World War that had long since become part of the landscape around them. The 3 children were 10-year-old Mary Bell, another girl named Norma Bell, unrelated who just happened to share the name Bell, and a 3-year-old boy whose name has never been publicly released. What happened next is unclear. There were no witnesses to the moment itself. At some point, the young boy fell approximately 7 feet from the roof of the shelter to the ground below. When he was found, he was injured, including a cut to his head. The boy was taken for medical attention, and later he gave an account of what had happened. But there was one thing that remained unknown. Nobody knew exactly how he had fallen. At the time, it was treated as an accident. There was no evidence to prove otherwise, and for those involved, life continued. But this would not be the last time the names Mary Bell and Norma Bell would appear in connection with a disturbing incident that year. Later that same day, another incident was reported. This time, it involved 5 children playing together in a nearby sandpit. Among them were Mary Bell and Norma Bell, along with 3 younger girls. What had started as an ordinary afternoon of play ended with concerned parents contacting police. According to the reports made at the time, Mary Bell had allegedly attempted to choke the 3 girls. One of the girls was later reported to have sand in her mouth and throat, adding to the concern surrounding the incident. Police spoke to the children involved and recorded their accounts of what had happened. However, with everyone involved being so young, no criminal charges were brought. The matter went no further. For those involved, it was simply another incident involving local children. And yet again, life in Scotswood carried on as normal. Almost 2 weeks passed without any further incidents attracting public attention. Then, on the afternoon of the 25th of May, 1968, a group of local children made their way into a boarded-up house on St. Margaret's Road in Scotswood. Inside, they made a shocking discovery. Lying on the floor was the body of 4-year-old Martin Brown. Police were called to the scene, and officers quickly secured the abandoned building, while investigators began trying to piece together what had happened. At first, there was little to suggest that Martin's death was the result of a deliberate act. An initial examination found only minor injuries, and his death was believed to have been accidental. For Martin's family, however, questions remained. How had a healthy 4-year-old boy come to die alone inside an abandoned house? While officers continued their inquiries into Martin Brown's death, life in Scotswood appeared to carry on much as it always had. But the day after Martin's body was discovered, another incident would leave police scratching their heads. During the night, 2 young girls broke into the nearby Ravenswood infant school and caused extensive damage inside the building. Classrooms were vandalized, furniture was overturned, and books and equipment were scattered across the floor. Before leaving, handwritten notes were left behind. One of them read, "I murder so that I may come back." Another referred directly to Martin Brown, claiming responsibility for his death. When the notes were discovered, police regarded them as little more than a cruel prank. With no reason to believe children could have been involved in Martin's death, The messages were not taken seriously. The two girls responsible for the break-in were Mary Bell and Norma Bell. With Martin Brown's death now under investigation, it became the turn of Mary Bell and Norma Bell to be interviewed. The two girls were questioned about their movements, their knowledge of Martin's death, and what they had seen around the time he was found. Both denied any involvement in harming Martin, but as detectives compared their statements with the information already gathered, questions began to emerge. The girls had been connected to several unusual incidents in the weeks before Martin's death, including the reports from the air raid shelter, the sandpit incident, and the notes left at Ravenswood Infant School. At this stage, however, police still had to determine what was fact, what was rumor, and what was simply the behavior of two children caught up in a disturbing series of events. The investigation continued. After being interviewed by police, Mary Bell and Norma Bell were released. Despite the unanswered questions surrounding Martin Brown's death, the investigation had reached a standstill. There was no clear explanation for what had happened inside the abandoned house, and no evidence strong enough to point police in a definite direction. As the weeks passed, the case remained open. Then, on the 31st of July 1968, another young child disappeared in Scotswood. His name was Brian Howe. He was 3 years old, and this time, the circumstances surrounding his disappearance would lead investigators down a very different path. As with any missing child case, the first hours were critical. Family, neighbors and police began searching the area, hoping that Brian would be found safe. But, as the search continued, the concerns surrounding his disappearance grew. Then Brian was found. The circumstances surrounding his discovery were immediately different from the case of Martin Brown. This time, investigators were not looking at an unexplained death. They were looking at a crime scene. Police now had to answer a question that would change the entire investigation. Who was responsible for what had happened to Brian Howe? His body was discovered on waste ground near the area where he lived. The discovery was made by a local woman who had joined the search after hearing that Brian was missing. When police arrived, they immediately recognized that this was very different from the case of Martin Brown. Brian had suffered injuries that indicated he had not died as the result of an accident. Among the evidence recovered from the scene was a pair of scissors, and investigators began piecing together what had happened in Brian's final moments. For police, there was now no question that they were investigating a deliberate killing. But the question remained, who had done this? And as detectives began looking closer at the events of the previous weeks, two names would come back into focus: Mary Bell and Norma Bell. With two young children now dead, detectives began a much deeper investigation. The earlier incidents involving Mary and Norma were revisited, along with the statements that had previously seemed unclear or unrelated. Police began examining every detail: the reports from May, the notes left at the nursery, and the accounts given by those who had seen the girls around the time of the deaths. The investigation was no longer focused on unexplained events. It was now focused on finding out exactly what had happened and who was responsible. During questioning, Mary Bell denied having any involvement in Brian's death. She maintained that she knew nothing about what had happened and attempted to distance herself from the investigation. But during her interview, Mary introduced a new explanation. She claimed she had seen another boy with Brian, and that this boy had been carrying scissors and had been using them to harm a cat. For detectives, this raised a serious question. Why was Mary introducing details about the scissors? The scissors were a key piece of evidence, but information about them had not been released publicly. Police believed Mary was attempting to place suspicion on someone else, while at the same time revealing knowledge that connected her to the crime scene. The boy Mary named was questioned, and his account was checked against witness statements. As investigators reviewed Mary's statements alongside the evidence they had gathered, their focus moved firmly towards her. Norma Bell remained part of the investigation because of her involvement in earlier events, but the evidence being gathered increasingly pointed towards Mary. The interviews had given police the breakthrough they needed. Mary Bell was charged with the murders of Martin Brown and Brian Howe. With the investigation complete, the case now moved from the streets of Scotswood to the courtroom. The evidence gathered by police would be examined in front of a jury, and Mary Bell would face trial for the deaths of Martin Brown and Brian Howe. But the question before the court was not only what had happened to the two boys, it was also a question of responsibility. What role had Mary played, and could she be held fully responsible for her actions? The answer would be decided inside the courtroom. The trial of Mary Bell began in December 1968 at Newcastle Assizes. The case attracted national attention, not only because of the deaths of two young boys, but because the person accused was only 11 years old. The prosecution argued that Mary was responsible for the deaths of Martin Brown and Brian Howe. The defense did not deny that Mary had been involved, but argued that she was not fully responsible for her actions because of her mental state. Psychiatric evidence became a central part of the trial. After hearing the evidence, the jury rejected murder convictions and found Mary Bell guilty of manslaughter on the grounds of diminished responsibility for both boys. She was ordered to be detained at Her Majesty's pleasure. The trial was over, but the questions surrounding Mary Bell were only beginning. Mary Bell was born on the 26th of May 1957 in Newcastle upon Tyne. From the outside, she was another child growing up in a working-class area of the city. But behind closed doors, Mary's early life was far from ordinary. Her childhood was marked by instability, neglect, and a home environment that would later become a major focus when people tried to understand her story. Her mother, Betty Bell, was a young woman whose own life was surrounded by difficulties. Mary was raised in circumstances where care, security, and stability were often lacking. As Mary grew older, concerns began to emerge about her behavior and the environment she was growing up in. But the full picture of Mary's childhood would only become known years later. Her mother, Betty Bell, worked as a prostitute, and Mary later claimed that from a very young age she had been exposed to situations no child should have experienced. In later interviews, Mary described being forced to help her mother with some of her clients and alleged that she was harmed and abused. During this period, these claims became a major part of discussions about Mary's childhood, although they were based on Mary's own accounts rather than events proven during the 1968 trial. What is known is that Mary grew up surrounded by instability, neglect, and circumstances that would later lead many people to question what experiences had shaped her early life. The question became one that would follow the case for decades. Was Mary Bell born this way, or was she shaped by the world around her?
Decades have now passed since the events of 1968. Mary Bell was eventually released from custody and went on to live a private life away from the public attention that surrounded her childhood. She later became a mother herself and built a new life under a different identity. Norma Bell, who was connected to some of the events surrounding the case, was never convicted of murder and went on to live separately from the attention that followed the trial. But while Mary Bell's story has continued to be discussed for decades, the people at the center of this tragedy must not be forgotten. Martin Brown and Brian Howe were two young boys whose lives ended far too soon. Their families were left to live with the consequences of what happened, and the impact of those events would never simply disappear. The case of Mary Bell remains one of Britain's most debated criminal cases, raising difficult questions about childhood, responsibility, justice, and whether a person's past can ever truly be separated from their future. But behind the headlines, the investigations, and the years of discussion, there were real children, real families, and a community that was changed forever. Thank you for watching.